Hey folks, tonight's presentation takes us into the deep end of a hidden world. Not flashy headlines, not the sanitized news clips or the stories wrapped in ridicule. We're stepping behind the curtain into encounters that were never meant to surface. Now, these are the reports that slip through the cracks, the ones whispered in private, passed down quietly through families, or only spoken aloud when the weight becomes too heavy to carry. What ties them together is not just the presence of unhuman intelligence, it's the response. Over and over again, the pattern repeats. An encounter occurs. Witnesses freeze in disbelief. Technology fails. Military assessed assets appear without explanation. Agencies no one can quite identify intervene. And suddenly, the truth becomes something that must be contained. Not explained, not understood, contained. When you scrutinize these cases, you begin to notice something unsettling. These are not isolated events. These are operations, procedures, a machinery of secrecy that activates the moment a civilian steps into forbidden territory. And the questions become, is the government hiding the truth? Or is the government hiding the fact that it no longer controls it? Tonight, each account adds a new piece to that puzzle. This is Phantoms of Monsters Radio, where the veil lifts one story at a time, and I thank you for joining us. In the first report, in 1981, a California high school student shared a story so specific, so bizarre, and so out of sync with conventional UFO lore that it deserves careful examination. Now, according to him, he and another student, a boy and a girl pair, were quietly selected to join dozens of hand-picked teenagers at a government-run program held on the Berkeley campus. The moment they arrived, the atmosphere was wrong. Not educational, not scientific, controlled. The people running the program didn't look like professors. They looked like federal agents. Black suits, black ties, no badges, no names, expressionless faces, watching, never engaging. Men in Black, before the phrase was pulp culture. Over the first few days, teenagers were tested for psychic ability, not in a mystical or spiritual sense, but in a structured clinical environment. Telekinesis tests involving spinning tops balanced on sticks, remote viewing sessions where students attempted to describe hidden objects in sealed rooms. Some laughed. Others took it seriously. And a handful displayed results that even they found startling. But it was the final day that everything changed. Students were herded into an auditorium. Armed soldiers blocked the exits, guns visible, posture rigid. No explanation, no comforting introduction, only a brief, chilling warning that what they were about to see would frighten them, and attempting to leave was forbidden. Then the curtains parted. In the center of the stage sat a cage. Inside, something small, gray, frail, breathing shallowly, and struggling to remain upright. It was a gray alien, alive, but dying. Some students screamed, others froze. A few approached involuntarily, as though pulled toward the cage. The creature's eyes drifted slowly across them, heavy, exhausted, but aware. And that is when the threat came, a direct warning. Never speak of what you saw. Never mention these past days. Your families are not immune to consequences. Now, this report fits a familiar pattern. Psychic ability plus government interest plus non-human presence plus intimidation. Projects like Stargate, MK Ultra, MK Ultra, declassified decades later, proved the government did test psychic phenomena. Adding a non-human element isn't a stretch in that context. The secrecy, completely consistent. Now, if the government was willing to expose teenagers to a dying extraterrestrial, imagine what they did when a fully functional craft and its occupants landed in a rural field. In May 1971, 3 boys and their dog Lucky camped in a field outside of Fredericksburg, Virginia. It was supposed to be another night outdoors, stars overhead, childish bravado, whispered stories, but something felt wrong. One of the boys sensed the presence, not a sound, not a movement, but a presence. When he turned, a glow hovered above the nearby pond, bright but soft, like the lantern trapped inside the fog. The object drifted forward, descending gently, extending mechanical legs before settling silently onto the earth. The boy crouched low in the grass as a door beneath the craft opened downwardly like a ramp. What stepped out was staggering. A massive humanoid, towering, muscular, gleaming as though its body or suit reflected the light unnaturally. Long arms, smooth surface. A glowing box in hand, vibrating faintly like it contained something alive. Lucky, the dog, snarled. A deep primal warning. The being turned into a stiff, mechanical pivot and retreated into the craft. The ramp sealed behind it. 10 silent minutes later, the craft lifted off and vanished. 2 nights later, another encounter occurred. A car's engine died. Headlights failed. The radio went silent. Red lights hovered overhead. The craft followed the car home before drifting away into darkness. NICAP investigators spent years on this case, They described it as one of the most compelling occupant encounters in their files. Now, two aspects of the Virginia Giant case demand focused analysis, not as anomalies, but as indicators of deliberate, controlled activity. The first is the precision of electromagnetic suppression. The vehicle was not damaged. The engine stalled. The headlights failed. The radio went silent. All systems returned to normal afterward. This is not a random interference. It indicates targeted field control designed to neutralize mobility and communication without leaving forensic evidence. Such effects are consistent with proximity-based electromagnetic field projection, a capability reportedly documented in close encounter cases involving structured craft. What distinguishes this event is timing. The interference occurred only after the witnesses had already experienced a prior encounter. This suggests recognition. The system did not respond to chance presence, but to identified observers. The second critical element is the humanoid entity's movement profile. Witness description of stiff bouncing or mechanically constrained motion recur across decades of human encounters. Now, in this case, the entity's size, apparent mass, and reflective surface indicate either gravitational compensation or a rigid biomechanical interface. The surface did not behave like fabric. It reflected light uniformly, suggesting an integrated shell rather than clothing. Such a structure would serve multiple functions: environmental shielding, psychological support, and controlled interaction with Earth's gravity and atmosphere. The handheld luminous device adds another layer. These objects are often described as emitting light, vibration, or sound during brief ground excursions. They do not behave like weapons. More likely, they function as sensors, collectors, or stabilizing instruments. The reported vibration implies an active process rather than a passive illumination. The entity's immediate withdrawal followed the dog's reaction is also instructive. There was no attempt in dominance or engagement. The response was abortive. This pattern appears in multiple cases where animal behavior disrupts non-human operations, possibly due to unpredictable movement, sound frequencies, or biological sensitivity that interferes with the entity's controlled environment. Finally, the delayed follow-up encounter shifts the case from curiosity to operation. The craft did not permanently depart the area. It returned days later and tracked the witnesses' vehicles. This was not intimidation. It was an assessment, a verification of exposure, a controlled observation following an interrupted event. Now, NICAP's sustained interest in the case reflects its structural strength. Multiple witnesses, repeated encounters, electromagnetic effects, a landed craft, an occupant, consistency across events. Viewed analytically, the Virginia Giant incident does not resemble an accidental visitation. It resembles a mission that was interrupted, aborted, and later reviewed. But if the Virginia case raises questions, the next one opens an entirely different chapter because it predates Roswell by 6 years. 6 years before Roswell, Reverend William Huffman received an urgent request to pray over crash victims outside Cape Girardeau. What he found was not a burning plane or tangled wreckage. Instead, he saw military personnel, federal agents, photographers, firefighters, and a disc-shaped craft. No seams, no rivets, no wings. just a smooth metallic disc with indecipherable hieroglyphic-like markings. And then there were the bodies. Small, hairless, large black eyes, no ears, no human proportions. The Reverend prayed over them, heart racing. Moments later, military officers surrounded him, issuing stern warnings. This event never happened. He must never speak of it, not to neighbors, not to church members, not to family. But he did tell his family, quietly, behind closed doors. And decades later, on her deathbed, his wife relayed the story to their granddaughter, Charlotte Mann. There was even a photograph, not lost, showing one of the beings being held upright by two men. Now, this case fits early military secrecy patterns: immediate federal presence, civilian clergy involvement, photographic documentation, physical retrieval, and threat-based suppression. This is Roswell before Roswell had a name. But while this story was nearly swallowed by time, the next one followed a single witness across continents, like something refused to let him go. In 1991, a 10-year-old was living on a military estate overlooking Edinburgh, saw a formation of lights, bright white, then splitting into 5 separate orbs arranged like 5-dot pattern on a die. They floated closer, deliberate, silent, massive. Animals reacted violently, dogs barking, pets hiding. The witness's stepfather stepped outside and estimated that the object was larger than a 747. Then the boy aimed a flashlight upward, and the lights vanished instantly. Over the following years, the phenomena escalated. Flickering lights at night, footsteps in the grass, humming vibrations that made the air feel alive, dreams of black figures draining the room of oxygen. After moving to RAF Headley Court, a new event occurred. A glowing, transparent, shoelace-like entity drifting near the porch. When acknowledged, it zipped up the wall with claw-like scratches. Now, this case suggests long-term monitoring or attachment. Some entities revisit witnesses for reasons we just don't understand. The pattern echo abductee behavior, but with environmental manifestations rather than classic bedside encounters. Now, from there, we move to another winged humanoid encounter, one that brought unexpected attention from a foreign military. A Toronto man received a terrified late-night call from a U.S. relative, an accomplished, rational, scientifically minded police officer. He and his wife were driving when a massive winged humanoid dropped onto the roadway ahead. Hair covered, yet somehow leathery, humanoid, but monstrous, with glowing yellow-red eyes and a wingspan of nearly 10 feet. His dash cam turned to static instantly. The creature approached the car deliberately. No fear, no hesitation. Only when he honked and flashed his lights did it launch upward and vanish. Afterward, the dash cam resumed functioning as though nothing had occurred. But the strangest part came later. Soon after, a representative of the Canadian military contacted him discreetly and warned him to keep the story to himself. Now, the most revealing aspect of this case is not the winged humanoid itself, but the speed and origin of the response. Foreign military contact following a civilian cryptid encounter is exceedingly rare. A Canadian military warning tied to a U.S. incident implies a cross-border monitoring a framework that operates independently of standard law enforcement. This suggests certain anomalies trigger shared classification protocols regardless of national boundaries. Equally significant is the dashcam failure profile. The device did not break or lose data. It turned to static precisely during the encounter and resumed normal function afterward. This points to localized electromagnetic field saturation rather than mechanical malfunction, and the timing suggests intent. Recording capability was neutralized without leaving evidence. The entity's behavior reinforced this interpretation. It approached deliberately without haste or fear, as if aware of dominance within the encounter space. Only when the driver asserted presence did it disengage, retreating vertically and immediately. This resembles controlled proximity testing, not random aggression. The possibility that the creature was technological or biomechanical cannot be dismissed. The leathery yet hair-covered appearance, glowing eyes, precise electromagnetic disruption, and the rapid military interest suggests a classification beyond wildlife, something unknown, possibly monitored and possibly deployed. The warning to remain silent completes the pattern. No threats, no paperwork, just authority and implication. A signal that the witness had crossed into restricted informational territory. Taken together, this case suggests that some winged humanoid encounters intersect directly with defense-aware networks, not because they are unknown, but because they are already well enough understood to require silence. And if the military pays attention to a single sighting, imagine what happens when someone possesses information they desperately want. So if you're enjoying tonight's presentation and want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. It really helps us to reach more people who are searching for answers about the unexplained. And make sure to click the notification bell so you won't miss any of our live shows. Now, from the deserts of New Mexico, we move east to a lake in Connecticut where something massive fell from the sky and then seemed to erase its own evidence. At 2 a.m. on April 10th, 2012, a glowing green object the size of a whale descended into Bantam Lake, witnessed by a motorist and a state trooper. Fire crews searched the water for hours. No debris, no oil, no disturbances. Over the next week, dozens of reports came in of shock waves, booms, flashes of light, and animal panic within a 5-mile radius. Meteor experts suggested the lurid shower, but meteors don't descend smoothly, don't maintain shape, and don't leave zero traces. And the night before, another green object was seen 25 miles away. Now, this case fits a pattern of controlled descent events, objects entering water or terrain with surgical precision. Whether extraterrestrial or classified terrestrial, the lack of evidence itself is evidence of retrieval or intentional masking. But if the Bantam Lake case highlights disappearance, our next story reveals intrusion, the kind search and rescue teams whisper about but never discuss publicly. A seasoned search and rescue officer encountered a pristine staircase deep in the woods during the hunt for a missing teenager. Carpeted, clean, warm, no debris, no wildlife, placed as though manufactured minutes earlier. Against orders, he climbed it. At the top, the world felt silent. No wind, no breathing, no internal body sounds. The pressure of wrongness descended, like being caught in a restricted government facility. Later, his furious trainer confronted him. "You went up the stairs. That's why we didn't find her." The implication, climbing the stairs changes something, interferes with the search, or redirects the missing person somewhere inaccessible. Now, a staircase appearing deep within an active search zone is not merely strange. It's a direct violation of environmental logic. Search and rescue personnel are trained to recognize terrain patterns instinctively. A structure that is clean, warm, and untouched by wildlife immediately signals artificial intrusion rather than abandonment or decay. The absence of animal activity is critical. Wildlife avoids unstable energetic or electromagnetic environments. An ecologically sterile area suggests an inclusion field, not coincidence. The sensory shutdown reported at the top of the staircase aligns with localized reality suppression. Not unconscious, but a dampening of external and internal feedback. The body recognizes a restricted boundary even when the mind struggles to define it. The trainer's reaction is the most revealing element. The statement, "That's why we didn't find her," implies prior awareness. Not superstition, but pattern recognition. Interaction with these structures appears to alter outcomes rather than assist recovery. This reframes the phenomenon. The staircase functions as a transitional mechanism. Once engaged, the missing person may no longer exist within the same accessible layer as the search. Now, if these structures appear selectively during active operations, then they're not random. They emerge where urgency, attention, and vulnerability converge, which suggests that this has happened before. And somebody already knows the cost of climbing. Now, this brings us to this intense encounter: a massive craft, direct alien communication, military pursuit, and the Men in Black intervention. Near Tonopah, Arizona, in 2009, witnesses encountered a triangular craft 3 football fields long, hovering 30 feet above the ground near Palo Verde nuclear plant. It mirrored their headlight flashes and revealed beings inside, short grays and tall figures nearly 9 feet tall. 2 of them exited the craft. Their approach triggers paralysis, then unexpected calm. Telepathic communication followed, warnings about Earth's destruction, global warning, an upcoming catastrophic event originating in the Middle East, far worse than 9/11. After the craft departed, the witnesses were chased by military helicopters, then forced to stop by Hummers. Men in Black surrounded the vehicle, knowing their names, locations, and personal histories. So the first question is, who else knows? This is not a military question. This is a containment question. Now, as unsettling as unexplained encounters can be, there are moments when the phenomenon does not end with the sighting or an experience. For some witnesses, it follows them home, watches quietly from a distance, and waits. The following account comes from someone who believes that whatever he was involved with did not stay in the past, and that force is connected to it may now be moving closer, patiently and deliberately, without ever needing to knock on the door. The claim that Men in Black supposedly followed this Roswell crash researcher. Now, the witness believes he had been quietly followed for years by figures he identified as Men in Black. Tall, pale, always dressed in black, sometimes with their faces partially covered. They never approached him, only appeared nearby, blending into crowds, close enough to miss unless he is looking for them. He believes they want a private journal documenting classified work from his past. What disturbs him most is not their appearance, but their presence. He describes them as emotionally alien, lacking anything that feels like human. He fears a confrontation is coming and that if it does, the journal will be taken, leaving him unsafe. The witness says his work began as a government UFO research project, later absorbed by powerful military and corporate interest. Now, during that research, an experimental energy device was developed that interfered with unidentified craft in flight. When aimed at the sky, lights flickered and fell. According to the witness, one such test brought down a craft near Roswell. He claimed 6 non-human beings were recovered, preserved, and hidden. He believes these beings have existed on Earth far longer than humanity and rely on the unknown planetary resource to operate their craft. According to the witness, technology has been exploited ever since, kept from the public, and protected by silence. Now, from an investigative standpoint, one detail cannot be ignored. In nearly every case where sensitive knowledge is acquired, recorded, or shared, the response is not chaotic. It is procedural. Witnesses describe delays that feel intentional, encounters that occur only after information has been gathered, individuals who appear only once with documentation. This suggests monitoring is not consistent but conditional. Something activates when certain thresholds are crossed. Equally troubling is the consistency in behavior, the lack of confrontation, the avoidance of overt force unless necessary, the preference for proximity over intimidation. These are not the actions of random agents of folklore caricatures. They resemble containment specialists, observers tasked with retrieval, deterrence, and quiet neutralization. In several historic cases, witnesses report that journals, tapes, photographs, or physical samples disappear without signs of forced entry. Doors were locked, containers were untouched. Only the material itself was gone. That implies access, either technological, procedural, or institutional. There is also a notable absence of overlap with traditional law enforcement. Local police are rarely involved. When military assets appear, they arrive quickly, stay briefly, and leave nothing behind. No reports, no follow-up, no jurisdictional clarity, as if the event never formally existed. Now, this raises a deeper question. If these operations are fundamental, they may not belong to any single government or agency. They may operate above national boundaries, be funded indirectly, and be protected by classification layers that do not expire. A structure that answers to no electorate and requires no public justification. If non-human intelligence is interacting with this planet, then it appears that specific human systems have already adapted to that reality. Not to inform the public, but to manage access, to decide who knows, who remembers, and who is quietly removed from the equation. And if witnesses are correct, then the most valuable commodity is not technology or biological material. It's testimony, personal records, firsthand continuity, the ability to connect events across time. Nixon may explain why those who document their experiences draw attention, while those who remain silent do not. Now, from an investigative perspective, the implication is sobering. This is not a mystery unfolding. It's a system already in motion. And it does not require belief to function, only compliance. Now, what can be determined from tonight's reports? When viewed separately, each of these accounts can be dismissed, sequestered, or explained. But when they are placed side by side, something else emerges. Not a single story, but recurring architecture, familiar roles, familiar reactions, and familiar consequences. Again and again, witnesses describe the same sequence: anomalous contact or knowledge, a sudden presence of authority, evidence that vanishes, questions that go unanswered, warnings are delivered quietly or implied without words, and then silence. What is striking is not just the appearance of non-human intelligence, but the speed with which human systems seem to respond. As if protocols already exist, as if someone is always listening, always prepared to move when specific lines are crossed. This suggests that whatever is encountered is not new. It's managed, tracked, contained within layers most people never see. And those layers do not always wear uniforms or carry badges. Sometimes they wear suits. Sometimes they blend into crowds, and sometimes they never speak at all. For decades, the focus has been on craft bodies, technology, and disclosure as a future event. But perhaps disclosure is not a single revelation waiting to happen. Maybe it's an ongoing process, carefully rationed, filtered, and redirected. Not to protect the public from panic, but to protect systems of control from scrutiny. If that is the case, then the most dangerous thing is not the phenomenon itself. It is an awareness. It is pattern recognition. It is people comparing notes and realizing they were never alone in their experience. Because once patterns are seen, they cannot be unseen. And once enough individuals realize they were monitored, redirected, or silenced in similar ways, the question shifts. It is no longer who is visiting us. It becomes who is managing the visitors, who benefits from the secrecy, and who decides what the rest of us are allowed to know. Maybe that's why certain witnesses are watched more closely than others. Not because of what they saw, but because of what they might connect. So perhaps these individuals were not chosen at all. Perhaps they were simply the ones who noticed, the ones who remembered, the ones who kept records, the ones who refused, quietly or openly, to let these records disappear. And if that is true, then the phenomenon is not just happening out there in the skies or the shadows. It is happening here, in systems, in silence, in spaces between official explanations. And that may be the most unsettling realization of all, because whatever this is, it's not waiting to arrive. It's already in place. So let's start the questions and answers session, and please type your questions in all caps. Dagnammit, what are your thoughts on a covert underground facility in Alaska housing an ancient structure? A 550-foot black stone pyramid inside a mountain in Denali National Park. Well, nothing that occurs in Alaska surprises me. And I mean, we heard so many theories about different things and undergrounds and facilities that have occurred there, have been there for a while, then suddenly disappear. We've had a lot of them disappear. I don't know what to think about it. I'm just like everybody else. I hear the stories, and all I can do is look at it try to figure out what I believe is going on. But of course, you're never going to get the real story. I don't think. I mean, just like disclosure in particular. I mean, I've said before, we're being spoon fed to a point where, you know, we're being allowed to see certain things. And we're not going to really find out much of anything unless it's need to know or something has actually happened that everybody must be informed about it. Jose Sanchez, the Reno alien case was unique in its appearance of dark brown mottled skin and red eyes, very different from the grays in this respect. It's the only account I've heard on these creatures. There have been others, but they didn't get the focus of national governments. Let's put it that way. This that case in particular, and a lot of cases that occur down in Hispanic America, especially down in South America, the U.S. is involved in a lot of that. And in fact, NASA, while they were doing the investigations, even before Project Blue Book and other operations, they were involved with that. Talk to Stan Gordon. He'll tell you about the encounters and things that he saw, especially with the crash in Pennsylvania. I mean, NASA was actually the first group there. They knew something was coming. Then the Army took the craft and supposedly took it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I don't know if that's exactly where it went to. And Stan has been looking into that for all these years. And, I mean, he's got his own theories, but there's others who have other theories as well. I don't know why people get so upset that we don't get disclosure on a lot of these things. Of course, you know, the government's going to has this thought that, you know, the civilians can't handle it. And that may be true. But regardless of the fact, they're just not going to disclose anything and everything. They're going to meter it out, you know. They're going to let you know what they want you to know. Dagnammit. In the last few years, the government and movie industry is purposely giving people snippets of real-life information about the reality of tangible cryptids out there. Yeah, it's slow. But like I have said before, the closest we're going to get to truth is not through the government or the military. It's going to be through civilians and just normal people who take the time and are enthusiastic enough to actually do the investigations. Reality will be exposed by those who experience or tell their experience. And I doubt that's going to change anytime soon. Anything else, folks? Well, I want to thank each and every one of you, especially those who did send donations. It's much appreciated. It's very needed. You know, we're trying to get this channel built more and more to the point that, you know, we can start presenting more and more information and, you know, information that you want to know about. Now, I do suggest that you leave comments about my presentations, what you think they should be like, changes, other information. I always have open ears, and I take a lot of this into account. So, yeah, please feel free to comment and let me know how you feel about it. So until we meet again next Friday, stay aware, stay safe, and as always, keep looking into the unexplained. Have a good night and have a great weekend. Talk to you later. Bye.